She walked into that store with 7 cents in her hand and a dying child in her arms. Clara Whitmore had already sold her wedding ring. She had sold her coat. She had nothing left except 7 cents and a prayer. Her little girl Rosie had not eaten in 5 days. When she begged the store owner for bread ends, the woman looked at her with ice in her eyes and said, "We do not give handouts." That is when the door swung open. A man so tall he blocked out the sun walked in. They called him the hard-eyed rancher, a man who never smiled, who kept to himself, who had buried his heart along with his wife and daughter 2 years before. He took one look at that dying child, and the impossible happened. A single tear rolled down his weathered face. This man who had not cried in years began to weep for a stranger's baby. Then he did something that would change all their lives forever. He pulled out more money than Clara had seen in a year and said 5 words, "She is coming home with me." What happens when 2 completely shattered souls find each other at their lowest moment? What happens on a ranch called Broken Ridge, named because that is what he was when he built it? Grace finds you when you are at the very bottom. Sometimes the person who saves you is just as broken as you are, and sometimes 2 shattered people can put each other back together in ways neither one could do alone. If you believe that help can come from the most unexpected places, stay until the very end. Drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from today. Clara knew she had to do something. She had already sold everything of value since the mine took her husband Samuel. Her wedding ring was gone. Her coat was gone. Now only 7 cents remained. The bell on the store door jingled. A well-dressed woman, once a friendly neighbor, walked right past Clara without a single glance. Inside, the warmth of the store was a shock. Mrs. Harper looked up from the counter, her eyes cold as stone. She took in Clara's bare feet and tattered dress. "Clara Whitmore," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I thought I told you we don't give handouts." Clara stepped forward, holding up her small fistful of coins. "Please, ma'am, I have 7 cents for some bread ends. Anything. My little girl is starving." "And I told you we are not a charity," Mrs. Harper snapped back, her chin high. "Hard work is what people need, not handouts." From across the store, another woman whispered loud enough for Clara to hear, "Shouldn't have children if you can't feed them." That broke something inside Clara. "I had a husband who provided for us just fine," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "He provided until your husband's mind collapsed and killed him. Then the company threw a widow and her child out of our home." The store fell dead silent. Just then the front door swung open, bringing in a blast of cold air. A man stood there so tall and broad he seemed to block out the sun. He was weathered like an old oak tree, and his hands looked strong enough to bend iron. But his eyes, they were the color of a stormy sky and held a sorrow so deep it made Clara's own grief feel small. "Mr. Mallister," Mrs. Harper said, her tone suddenly full of respect. The big man did not answer her. His gaze was locked on Rosie's small, still face. He just stared at the dying child, and his stern expression crumbled. To Clara's astonishment, the giant of a man fought back tears. His whole body trembled. "How long?" he asked, his voice rough like gravel. "How long since she's eaten?" "5 days," Clara whispered. Mallister closed his eyes, and when he opened them, tears were streaming down his face. He turned to Mrs. Harper, his look so fierce it made her flinch. "How much for milk, bread, and broth? Everything a sick child needs, now." "Well, that would be several dollars," she stammered. Mallister pulled out a thick leather wallet and slapped more money on the counter than Clara had seen in a year. "Fill a basket with everything she needs," he commanded. Mrs. Harper, red-faced, hurried to do as he said. Clara was frozen, suspicious. "Why?" she asked him quietly. "Why are you doing this?" Mallister finally looked at her, truly seeing the exhaustion and fear in her eyes. "Because someone should have," he said simply. He pushed the full basket toward her. "I cannot take charity," Clara said, her voice cracking. "Then do not call it charity," he replied. Call it one soul helping another. That is just being human. Clara followed him out into the cold, where he loaded the basket onto a wagon. "Get in," he said gently, nodding at her bleeding feet. "I do not know you," she said, clutching Rosie tighter. "My name is Josiah Mallister. I own a ranch about 10 miles from here," he said. "I have a warm home, hot food, and a doctor who owes me a favor. Your little girl is dying, ma'am. You can let your pride kill her, or you can get in this wagon." The sharp words hit her hard. "I am not proud," she whispered. "I begged for scraps. I have no pride left." "Then why are you hesitating?" "I just do not understand why you would help us." Josiah Mallister stared off at the gray horizon for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with a pain that was old and deep. 2 years. A while back I had a wife and a little girl about your daughter's age. They died in a fire. I was out in the barn and heard my Mary screaming. By the time I got to the house, it was too late. I couldn't save 'em. Clara's heart just about broke. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, knowing the words weren't near enough. "I ain't telling you for pity," Mallister said, his jaw set hard. "I'm telling you 'cause for 2 years I figured God was punishing me. Then I saw your little girl's face and I thought, maybe this is why I'm still here. Maybe I can save her." Rosie's eyes fluttered open for a second, then closed. "Get in the wagon, please." Clara climbed in, her hands shaking as she held Rosie. Mallister gave her a small bottle of milk. Just a little at first. After a frightening moment, Rosie's lips parted and she took a few weak swallows. It was like watching a miracle. "Thank you," Clara choked out. "Don't thank me yet," Mallister said, clicking at the horses. "We got a long ride ahead." As Mineral Springs faded behind them, the store where she'd been shamed, the church where her prayers went unanswered, Clara finally asked, "Where are we going?" "My ranch. It's called Broken Ridge." He paused for a long time. "Because that's what I was when I named it." For the next hour, Clara focused on getting more milk into Rosie. Slowly, color started returning to her daughter's cheeks. "She's a fighter," Mallister said, his eyes on the road. "Like her mama." Clara gave a sad laugh. "I ain't no fighter. I'm just too stubborn to die." "Reckon that's the same thing," he said. She noticed a burn scar on his arm. "You tried to save them." His hands gripped the reins tighter. "Tried ain't the same as did." "But trying matters, doesn't it?" she asked softly. He just looked at her. "They're still gone." She understood that kind of guilt, the kind that reason can't touch. "What was her name?" she asked. "Your little girl." A shadow crossed his face. "Lily," he whispered. "She would have been 7 now." Rosie mumbled in her sleep, and Mallister's gaze softened. "Your husband?" he asked after a bit. "What was he like?" "Samuel," Clara smiled. "He was a dreamer. Died in a mine collapse. The Westbrook Mining Company called it an accident, but everyone knew those tunnels weren't safe." "And they threw you out of your home," Mallister stated more than asked. "Company housing. Samuel was barely in the ground when they handed me the eviction notice." "What about your people?" "My folks are gone. Came west with Samuel because I had nothing left in Ohio." "So it's just you and Rosie?" "It's just us," she confirmed. He was quiet for a long stretch, then said, "Well, it ain't just you anymore. You have a place to stay, for as long as you need. No strings." "Why would you do that for strangers?" He finally turned and met her gaze. "Because strangers are just people you haven't helped yet." Just then, Rosie's eyes opened. "Mama," she whispered, her voice a little stronger. Her eyes found Mallister. "Who's the big man?" Despite it all, Clara laughed. "His name is Mr. Mallister. He's helping us." Rosie looked him over. You're big like a mountain. The corner of Mallister's mouth twitched. I reckon I am. Why do you look so sad, Mr. Mountain? Clara held her breath, but Mallister answered her. Because I miss someone, he said quietly. Someone who was about your size. Oh, Rosie said with a solemn nod. My papa went to heaven too. Mama cries when she thinks I'm sleeping. Rosie looked back to Mallister. Do you cry, Mr. Mountain? His knuckles went white on the reins. Sometimes, he admitted, when nobody's watching. Mama says that's okay, Rosie said, yawning. It means you loved somebody real hard. Before he could answer, she was asleep again. When the ranch came into view, it wasn't some rough cabin. It was a fine two-story house with smoke curling from the chimney. But as they got closer, Clara saw the things that made her heart ache. A small, weathered swing set. A child's rocking horse on the porch with peel-in paint. Toys left in the garden. I couldn't bring myself to put them away, he said softly. Mary always said a house should look lived in. Clara understood completely. She still had Samuel's coat. They rode on, a quiet understanding passing between them. When they arrived, he carried a sleeping Rosie inside and placed her gently on a soft bed near the fire. He had saved them. But as days turned into a week, their presence on Broken Ridge started a storm of gossip in town. It felt like home. For 3 long months, Clara had forgotten what that word even meant. Josiah Mallister helped her from the wagon, his touch gentle and sure. He led them onto the porch and opened the door to a house that felt frozen in time. A fire was going in the hearth, but everything else was still. In the kitchen, a table was set for 3, the plates covered in a fine layer of dust. On a mantelpiece sat a family photo. Clara found herself walking toward it. A woman with kind eyes held a little girl who couldn't be more than 5. The child had her father's stormy gray eyes. Behind them stood Josiah, his hand on his wife's shoulder, a happiness in his face she'd never seen. That was Mary and Lily, he said quietly beside her. They were lost in the fire. I was in the barn. By the time I reached the house, his voice broke. I tried to get in. I tried. Clara touched his arm gently. You don't have to. I couldn't save them, he whispered. My own wife and child. Just then, Rosie stirred in Clara's arms. She looked at the picture, then at the big man beside them. Is that your little girl? She asked softly. The one that's in heaven now? Josiah's chin trembled. Yes. She was pretty like a princess. She was my princess, he choked out. Rosie reached out her tiny hand and touched his huge, calloused fingers. I'm sorry she's gone, Mr. Mountain, she said with a sleepy yawn. But maybe you can help Mama and me until you're not so sad anymore. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Josiah just stood there, staring at the small hand covering his own. Then, the storm in his gray eyes finally broke. Yeah, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Yeah, I reckon I can do that. He knelt down to Rosie's level. How about some hot supper and a warm bed, little one? Rosie nodded sleepily. That sounds real nice, Mr. Mountain. Josiah looked up at Clara, his eyes red but holding a new light. It wasn't happiness, not yet. It was hope. The guest room is upstairs, he said quietly. Clean sheets and blankets. I'll heat up some broth for y'all. Tears streamed down Clara's face. Mr. Mallister. Josiah, he corrected her gently. Call me Josiah. Josiah, she tried the name. I don't know how to thank you. Then don't, he said, turning toward the kitchen. Just let me help. That's all I ask. Later that evening, Clara sat by the fire, a warm and sleeping Rosie in her lap. For the first time in months, they were safe. For the first time in months, they were full. Josiah sat across from them, carving a piece of wood. His big hands moved with a surprising gentleness, slowly shaping a small doll. Clara watched him, her mind reeling. This morning she'd had 7 cents and a sick child. Now she was in a warm home with a man carving a toy for her daughter. "Josiah?" she asked softly. He looked up. "Why did you come to town today? You said you lived 10 miles out." His hands went still. "Today's the anniversary," he finally said. 2 years since the fire. I always go to town this day. I can't stand being in this house alone with the memories." He paused. "I usually head for the saloon. But this year, something made me go to the general store instead." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. "If you had gone to the saloon..." "I know." They sat in the quiet, the weight of that thought hanging between them. "Maybe prayers do get answered," Clara whispered. "Just not always how we expect," Josiah said, his gray eyes meeting hers in the firelight. The smell of coffee woke Clara. For a second she was lost. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet. Then it all came rushing back. She sat up, her heart pounding. The spot beside her was empty. Rosie was gone. Clara flew out of bed and down the stairs, panic clawing at her throat. She burst into the kitchen and just stopped. Rosie was sitting at the table, a glass of milk in her hands and honey smeared all over her face. And Josiah stood at the stove, a big apron tied around his waist, making him look a little less like a mountain. "Mama," Rosie's face lit up. "Mr. Mountain made pancakes with honey." Clara leaned against the doorframe, trying to catch her breath. Josiah turned, a worried look on his face. "You all right?" "I woke up and she was gone," Clara said, her voice trembling. "I thought she came down about an hour ago. Said she was hungry," Josiah explained gently. "I'm sorry, I should have come and told you." Clara shook her head, a hand on her racing heart. "No, it's me. I'm not used to anyone else looking after her. Not used to anyone helping at all." He just nodded, understanding. "Well, there's coffee on the stove, and a plate of pancakes for you." As Clara sat down, Rosie chattered on about the horses and the snow. Her voice was stronger, her cheeks had color. Tears welled in Clara's eyes. "Mama, why are you crying?" Rosie asked. "Are you sad?" "No, baby." Clara wiped her eyes. "I'm happy. Sometimes folks cry when they're happy, too." Rosie thought about that. "That's confusing." "Yeah," Clara laughed softly. "It is." Josiah set a plate of pancakes down for her. His hand grazed her shoulder just for a second. "You ought to eat," he said, his voice low. Clara stared at the plate of food, her stomach aching with hunger. But she couldn't bring herself to eat. "What is it?" Josiah asked. She finally looked at him. "I'm just waiting for the catch. Men do not offer kindness for free." Her words were sharp. "I learned that after my husband died, the boarding house owner wanted favors. A rancher offered work that was not decent. Even the minister suggested I could earn charity with a certain kind of gratitude." The silence was heavy. She expected pity in Josiah's eyes, but saw rage instead. "Who?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Give me their names." "Why?" Clara asked, surprised. "Because men like that do not deserve to live," he said. The raw anger in his voice was for her. It was real. "It does not matter," she whispered. "I survived." Josiah's jaw was tight. "It matters. I am not those men. You and your daughter Rosie are safe here. I promise you that." Rosie, who had been eating quietly, looked up. "Are you and Mama fighting?" Josiah's face softened. "No, little one. We are just talking." "Good," Rosie said. "You make Mama less scared." Clara felt her heart clench. Her daughter had seen all of her fear. She looked at Josiah, and a silent understanding passed between them. That morning, Clara learned Josiah ran his horse ranch mostly by himself. He could not stand to have people around since the fire. She also saw that his wife Mary's room was untouched. A brush on the dresser, a book on the nightstand. It was a shrine to his lost love. His daughter Lucy's room was closed. But Rosie found her later. "Mr. Mountain goes in the little girl's room," Rosie whispered, holding a small wooden horse. "I saw him crying last night." Clara's heart ached for this broken man. "He gave me this," Rosie said. "He told me it was his daughter's, but she would want me to have it." "Is Mr. Mountain lonely, Mama?" Rosie asked. "Yes, honey, I think he is very lonely." "Like us," Rosie said. "Maybe we can be lonely together. That is better." Just then, the front door burst open. Josiah stood there, his face grim. "There is a rider coming up the road, and he is coming fast." Clara pulled Rosie close, her heart pounding. Fast riders always meant trouble. Josiah grabbed the rifle from above the fireplace and stepped onto the porch. She heard voices, one deep and one higher. The door opened again. Josiah stood with an older man holding a doctor's bag. "Clara, this is Doc Webb. He is here to check on Rosie." "You called a doctor?" Clara said, confused. "I wanted to make sure she is healing right," Josiah said simply. Doc Webb knelt down with a kind smile. "Well now, who do we have here?" "I am Rosie," her daughter said shyly. The doctor was gentle as he checked her over. While he worked, Clara stood beside Josiah. "You did not have to do this," she said softly. He was quiet for a moment. "2 years ago," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I would have given everything for someone to help my family. But nobody came. I will not be the man who does not come. Not ever again." "She is malnourished but getting stronger," Doc Webb finally announced. "A week of good food and rest, and she will be fine." Clara almost collapsed with relief. "But," the doctor added, looking seriously at Josiah, "I expect excitement will be hard to avoid." "What do you mean?" Clara asked. Josiah sighed. "When I helped you in town yesterday, half the folks in Mineral Springs saw it. People talk." Doc Webb nodded grimly. "And that talk has spread. By now, everyone knows you are staying here, and they are not happy about it." "Not happy?" Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "The town's leaders," Doc Webb explained, "have decided an unmarried woman living with an unmarried man is a scandal. They are questioning if you are a fit mother." Clara's world started to spin. "They want to take Rosie," she whispered in horror. "They want to send her to an orphanage." "No," she cried out, "they cannot. She is all I have." Josiah stepped in front of her, his body a shield. "Nobody is taking anyone. Not while I'm standing here." "Josiah, you cannot fight the whole town," the doctor warned. A dangerous look came into Josiah's eyes. "Watch me." "And go where?" Josiah's voice was sharp. "Back to sleeping in barns? Back to watching your little girl starve? At least she'd be with me." "She won't be with anyone if she's dead, Clara." The words hit her like a slap. Rosie started to cry. Clara hugged her daughter close. "No, baby. Nobody is taking you anywhere. I promise." "Your mama's right," Josiah said, kneeling beside them. "Nobody's taking you, Rosie. I won't let 'em." "Promise?" Rosie sniffled. "I promise." Doc Webb cleared his throat. "There might be a way to settle all this. A way to make it proper." "What way?" Clara asked, dreading the answer. The doctor looked from her to Josiah. "Well, there's a legal way. One that would make your stay here respectable in the eyes of the town." Clara felt her face grow hot. "You can't be serious." "I'm just pointing out the facts," Doc Webb said plainly. "Getting married would shut 'em all up. It'd protect the child. That's the long and short of it." The town doctor, a man named Webb, finally came out to the ranch. "Josiah," he said, skipping the pleasantries, "the whole town is talking. They're saying it ain't proper her staying here with you." Clara's face burned with shame. She started to speak, to say they would leave, but Josiah Mallister stood tall. "Let 'em talk." His voice was like rumbling thunder. "Clara and Rosie are guests in my home. If anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me." After the doctor left, a heavy silence filled the room. "Why?" Clara finally asked him. "Why risk your good name for us?" He looked at her, his gray eyes seeing right through her. "The truth is, for 2 years, I've just been waiting to die. Then I saw Rosie. I saw you. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like living again. You gave me a reason to try. And on that broken ridge, 3 broken people started putting the pieces back together. It wasn't a scandal. It was the beginning of a family. I was just waiting to die, not caring about a single thing." His voice was rough. "Then I saw your little girl in that store. And I felt a purpose I hadn't felt since the fire. For the first time in 2 years, I had a reason to live." Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks. "You saved us," she whispered. "But I reckon we might be saving you too." Josiah's hand came up and gently brushed a tear away. "Maybe that's how it's meant to work," he said quietly. "Maybe we all save each other." Just then, Rosie's small voice broke the quiet. "Mama, I'm hungry again." Clara laughed through her tears. Josiah's voice was lighter now. "That's the best sign. I'll make some soup." When he turned to the kitchen, Clara caught his arm. "Josiah, thank you." A warm, dangerous flicker in his eyes terrified her. "You're welcome, Clara." He left her standing there, her heart pounding. Clara couldn't sleep that night. The house was safe and quiet, but her mind wouldn't settle. She crept downstairs and found Josiah by the dying embers, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring into the dark. "Can't sleep either?" she asked softly. He wasn't surprised to see her. Never can, not on nights like this, nights when the dreams come. She sat across from him. "What do you dream about?" He took a long drink. The fire. Mary screaming. Lily crying for her papa. His voice was empty. "I dream I break that door down in time. I carry them out, and we all stand in the yard and watch the house burn together." He paused. "And then I wake up and remember that ain't how it happened." His hand tightened on the glass. "By the time I smelled the smoke from the chimney, the whole upstairs was an inferno. I tried to get to that door. I could hear my little girl calling for me." His voice broke, and I couldn't get to her. Clara knelt beside his chair without thinking and covered his hand with hers. "You tried," she whispered. "That's what matters. It doesn't matter. They're gone." "It matters to me," she said, squeezing his hand. "And it would matter to them. Mary and Lily wouldn't want you to torture yourself." After a long moment, his free hand gently cupped her face. "Clara," he started. "Don't." She closed her eyes. "It's too complicated. We've known each other for one day, and a whole town wants to tear us apart." She met his gaze. "I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of feeling something again. Of letting myself hope. Of losing someone else." Her voice was just a whisper. "I cannot go through that again, Josiah." His thumb gently brushed her cheek. "What if I gave you my word that you would not have to?" "You cannot promise that. Nobody could." "Then let me promise you this," he said, his forehead touching hers. "I will fight for you and Rosie with every last breath I have." Tears rolled down her face. "Why would you do that for us?" "Because you two are the best thing to happen to me in 2 long years. And I am not letting that go." She knew she should leave, but she leaned into his touch instead. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Maybe so. We barely know each other." "I do not care what the town thinks, Clara. I am just asking you to stay. Let me prove to you that some men are different." She looked into his gray eyes and saw a flicker of hope. All right, she whispered. For my daughter's sake, I will stay. For Rosie's sake, he echoed. Clara stood up, pulling the blanket tight. I ought to get back to bed. He did not argue, but neither of them moved. When she was halfway up the stairs, he called her name. She looked back at him, his face shadowed by the firelight. Thank you, he said, for reminding me what it feels like to look forward to tomorrow. Her heart ached. Good night, Josiah. Back in bed, she pulled Rosie close, breathing in the smell of her hair. As she fell asleep, a feeling of dread washed over her. She was right to be afraid. Miles away, a man named Cornelius Whitmore read a telegram. He had just found out where his brother's widow was hiding. He crumpled the paper in his hand. Found you, he hissed into the quiet room. A sharp knock on the door woke Clara at dawn. Her heart pounded. She heard Josiah's heavy boots on the stairs, then his low voice. Who is it? A moment later, his voice was like ice. You are not welcome here. Clara rushed downstairs. Josiah, what is going on? Go back upstairs, Clara. But then a familiar voice floated in from the porch. Hello, Clara. It has been a while. Her blood ran cold. She knew that voice from her nightmares. Cornelius. Josiah moved aside and she saw him. Cornelius Whitmore, dressed in fancy clothes that did not belong in Wyoming, his cold eyes locking onto hers. You have been a hard woman to track down, sister-in-law. Do not call me that, Clara said, her voice shaking. Why are you here? I have come to get my niece. The words felt like a punch to the gut. What? He held up a folded piece of paper. I have guardianship papers signed by a judge. As Rosie's closest male kin, I have a legal right. Guardianship. I am her mother. A mother who cannot provide, he sneered, looking around the simple cabin. A mother living in sin with a stranger. Josiah stepped forward. Mister, you have about 5 seconds to get off my land before I help you leave. This town will be at your door by this afternoon, Cornelius warned, his voice full of spite. They will not leave until that child is with me. Josiah moved like lightning, grabbing Cornelius by the collar and lifting him clean off the porch. You listen to me, he growled. That woman has more decency than you will ever know. She fought to keep her child alive, while men like you did nothing. You are not taking her baby. Cornelius, pale and choking, stumbled back when Josiah let him go. We will see about that, he snarled, climbing onto his horse. We will see. Clara watched him ride away, a small speck against the snow. Then her legs gave out and Josiah caught her. He is going to take her from me, she sobbed. Nobody is taking anybody. You do not get it, she cried, clutching his shirt. He is a lawyer with powerful friends. A piece of paper does not mean a thing out here. What matters is what is right. Mama? Rosie stood at the bottom of the stairs, her eyes wide with fear. Why was that mean man yelling? Clara knelt in front of her daughter, forcing a smile. It was just grown-ups talking, sweet girl. Is he going to take me away? The question broke Clara's heart. No, baby. I promise nobody is ever taking you away. Over Rosie's head, her eyes met Josiah's. He gave a firm nod, making his own promise. The morning dragged on in silence. Josiah paced like a caged wolf staring down the road. They will come, he finally said. The whole town, what are we going to do, she asked. We will stand our ground. This is not your fight, Josiah. You barely know me. Why would you do this? Because it is the right thing to do, he said, his eyes burning with intensity. 2 years ago, I lost my own family. I lost my wife, Mary, and my daughter, Lily, and I could not stop it. His voice broke. I could not save them, Clara, but I can save you and Rosie, and I will be damned if I fail again. He crossed the room and took her hands. I know this is happening fast, and I know it does not make a lick of sense. But when I saw you, I knew. When I saw you in that store, fighting for your child with everything you had, something woke up in me. Hope. He squeezed her hands. You and Rosie gave me hope, Clara, and I ain't giving that up without a fight. Before she could answer, Rosie cried out from inside, Mama, there's horses coming. Clara's heart stopped. She ran to the window and saw at least a dozen riders. Sheriff Gaines was at the front, and right beside him was Cornelius Whitmore. "They're here," she whispered. Josiah was already moving, grabbing his rifle from above the fireplace. "Josiah, no," Clara pleaded. "You can't shoot the sheriff." "I ain't planning on shooting anyone," he said grimly. "But I ain't letting them walk in here like they own the place." "Rosie, stay inside," she called as she followed him out the door. "Afternoon, Josiah," the sheriff said, dismounting. "Sheriff?" Josiah's voice was cold as ice. "We need to talk about the situation here." "There ain't no situation." "I'm afraid there is. Mr. Whitmore has legal papers for the child, and these good people," he gestured to the townsfolk, "have concerns about your living arrangements." Mrs. Harper from the general store pushed forward. "It's a scandal, Josiah Mallister. An unmarried woman under your roof." "The kind that says we help people in need," Josiah replied evenly. "Something your town seems to have forgotten." "How dare you!" she shrieked. Josiah's voice cut like a knife. "I watched you turn away a starving mother. I watched you refuse to sell her bread ends for 7 cents while her daughter was too weak to cry. So don't you dare lecture me about morality, ma'am." "That can be arranged." Cornelius smiled coldly after Clara defied him. Josiah stepped forward, his rifle ready. "You threatening her?" "I'm stating facts," Cornelius said, holding up his papers. "Judge Morrison declared Clara an unfit mother. As Rosie's closest male relative, I have custody. It's all legal. Legal don't mean right." Suddenly, Rosie stood in the doorway, her face pale with fear. "I don't want to go with him," her voice trembled. "He's mean. He looks like Papa, but he's not Papa. I want to stay with you and Mr. Mountain." Rosie's voice grew stronger. "When we were hungry, you never came. When Mama cried, you never came. Mr. Mountain came. He gave us food and a warm house, and he makes Mama smile. I want to stay here." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Mrs. Harper looked uncertain. The sheriff cleared his throat. "The child has made her feelings clear." "Children don't know what's best for them," Cornelius snapped. "Then why ain't you listening to her mother?" Josiah's voice was quiet but deadly. "Her mother couldn't keep her fed," Cornelius sneered. "No!" Clara stepped forward, pulling Rosie behind her. "We're here because this town threw us out. We're here because people like you only show up when there's something to take. Where were you when Samuel died? When I sold my wedding ring for bread?" Her voice rose with each question. "You never answered my letters. You let us starve for 3 months." "I didn't receive your letters," Cornelius said stiffly. "Liar." The word cracked like a whip. "I sent 5 letters to your office in Cheyenne." "I wrote you 5 times begging for help." Clara's voice was cold steel. "Your own secretary replied that you were too busy. I still have the letter." Cornelius went pale. "Would you like me to show the sheriff how you ignored your brother's family while we starved?" The crowd began to murmur. "Is this true, Mr. Whitmore?" one woman asked. "There's been a misunderstanding," he stammered. "The only misunderstanding here," Josiah said, "is you thinking you can take what is not yours." "All right, calm down," Sheriff Gaines ordered. A voice called from the back. "This business has gone far enough." Doc Webb pushed his way forward. "Thaddeus, this is not your concern," the sheriff said. "The hell it is not," Doc replied. "I have known Josiah for 10 years, and I treated that little girl. 3 days ago she was dying. This man took her in and saved her life." "Here," Cornelius began, "it's exactly the issue." Doc Webb rounded on him. "You want to talk about fitness? About proper care. That child was 5 days from death when Clara brought her to Josiah's door. 5 days. And now look at her. Pink cheeks, bright eyes, laughing and playing. That's the work of a loving mother and a good man. What have you done, Mr. Whitmore? Besides, show up with papers." Cornelius's face had gone from pale to red. "I don't have to justify myself to—" "Yes, you do." Doc Webb turned to face the crowd. "All of you. You come here with your moral outrage and your custody papers. But where were you when this woman needed help? Where were you when her child was starving? I didn't see any of you at my office asking how you could help." Mrs. Harper opened her mouth, but Doc Webb cut her off. "Don't, Eugenia. I was in your store that day. I saw you turn her away. 7 cents. She had 7 cents and a dying daughter, And you couldn't sell her bread ends. His voice dripped with contempt. So don't you dare stand there and lecture about morality. The crowd had gone silent. Sheriff Gaines looked deeply uncomfortable. Be that as it may, Doc, there's still the matter of the legal papers. Papers that were obtained through fraud. Doc Webb pulled a telegram from his pocket. I sent word to a friend of mine in Cheyenne this morning. Judge Morrison says he never signed any custody documents. Mr. Whitmore forged his signature. The collective gasp was audible. Cornelius's face went white. That's a lie. Is it? Doc Webb held up the telegram. Judge Morrison's exact words. No such papers were issued by my office. Any documents bearing my signature in this matter are fraudulent. Sheriff Gaines turned to Cornelius, his expression hardening. You want to explain this, Mr. Whitmore? There must be some mistake. The only mistake, Josiah said quietly. Was you thinking you could get away with it? Sheriff Gaines drew himself up. Cornelius Whitmore. You're under arrest for fraud and forgery. You can't do this. Cornelius's composed facade finally cracked. She's my brother's child. I have a right. You have the right to remain silent. Sheriff Gaines nodded to two of his deputies. Take him. Clara watched as Cornelius was dragged off his horse and bound. He struggled, shouting threats and protests, but the deputies held him firm. As they led him away, Cornelius turned back to Clara. His eyes burned with hatred. This isn't over, he snarled. I'll be back. That child belongs with family, not with some broken-down rancher playing house. Josiah stepped forward, placing himself between Cornelius and Clara. That child has a family right here, and if you ever come near them again, I'll make sure you regret it. Cornelius spat at his feet. You'll regret this, Mallister. All of you will. The deputies hauled him away. The crowd stood in stunned silence. Several of the townspeople looked ashamed. Others just looked confused. Sheriff Gaines removed his hat and turned to Clara. Ma'am, I apologize. We were wrong to come here like this. Clara didn't trust her voice. She simply nodded. And Josiah? The sheriff met his eyes. I know we've had our differences, but you're a good man. I'm sorry we doubted that. Josiah's jaw tightened, but he nodded stiffly. One by one, the townspeople mounted their horses and rode away. Mrs. Harper was the last to leave. She paused at the edge of the yard, looking back at Clara with an expression that might have been regret. I was wrong, she said quietly. About you? About a lot of things? Clara met her eyes. Yes, you were. Mrs. Harper flinched, but she didn't argue. She simply nodded and rode away. Finally, only Doc Webb remained. Well, he said, dismounting and walking toward the porch. That was more excitement than I've had in years. Clara laughed despite herself. It came out half hysterical, but it was still a laugh. How did you know about the forged papers? I didn't. Doc Webb smiled slightly. I just guessed. But I figured a man who ignores his starving sister-in-law isn't above forgery. You bluffed. I sent a real telegram. I just didn't wait for the answer. His eyes twinkled. Turns out I guessed right. Josiah shook his head slowly. You're a dangerous man, Thaddeus Webb. Only to people who deserve it. Rosie tugged on Clara's dress. Mama is the mean man going to jail. Clara knelt down and pulled her daughter into her arms. Yes, baby. He's going to jail. Good. Rosie's voice was firm. He was bad. Yes, he was. But we're safe now. Clara looked up at Josiah, then at Doc Webb, then back at her daughter. Yes, baby. We're safe. But even as she said the words, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't quite true. Cornelius was gone, but his words echoed in her mind. This isn't over. She prayed she was wrong. That night, after Rosie was asleep, Clara found Josiah on the porch, staring up at the stars. You should be inside, she said softly. It's freezing. I needed air. Clara moved to stand beside him. Thank you for today, for everything. For Josiah was quiet for a long moment when he spoke. His voice was rough. I meant what I said about fighting for you. I know. No, I mean... He turned to face her, his storm gray eyes intense. Clara, I know this is crazy. I know we've only known each other for a few days, but I can't stop thinking about what almost happened today. What could still happen? Clara's heart began to pound. What do you mean? Those papers were fake. But Cornelius was right about one thing. The law ain't on our side. If someone else comes, someone with real authority, they could still take Rosie. Unless what? Josiah took a deep breath. Unless we gave them nothing to complain about. Clara felt the world tilt. Josiah, are you? I am asking you to marry me. The words hung in the cold air between them. I know it's too fast. Josiah continued, his voice unsteady. I know you barely know me. I know there's 100 reasons to say no, but Clara, I can't lose you, either of you. And if marriage is what it takes to keep you safe, then I'm asking. Clara's throat was too tight to speak. Josiah's face fell slightly. You don't have to answer now. Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know that. Yes. He blinked. What? Yes. Josiah Mallister. Clara's voice shook, but her eyes were steady. I'll marry you. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Josiah's massive arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and Clara buried her face in his chest. Are you sure? He whispered against her hair. No. She laughed softly. But I'm tired of being sure. I'm tired of being careful. I'm tired of being alone. She pulled back to look at his face. You saved us, Josiah. You gave us hope when we had nothing. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I started to love you. His breath caught. You love me. I love you. The words came easier than she expected. I don't know when it happened or how, but I do. I love you. Josiah's hands cupped her face gently. I love you too, Clara. I think I have since the moment I saw you fighting for your daughter with 7 cents and a broken heart. He kissed her, then soft, sweet, full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Clara was crying. Happy tears, she explained, wiping her cheeks. Josiah smiled a real smile, the first she'd seen from him. Happy tears are good, the best kind. They stood together on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the stars wheel overhead. And somewhere in the darkness, watching from the tree-in at the edge of the property, a figure on horseback observed them. His face was hidden in shadow, but his intentions were clear. Cornelius Whitmore had escaped the deputies, and he wasn't finished yet. Clara woke to Roz's screams. She was out of bed before her eyes fully opened, her heart slamming against her ribs. The bedroom was dark, cold, wrong, Rosie. Clara's voice tore through the silence. Rosie, where are you? The screaming had stopped. That was worse. Clara ran into the hallway, nearly colliding with Josiah. He had his rifle in his hands and his face was ghost white. She's not in her room, he said. Clara, she's not. A voice came from downstairs, cold, familiar, triumphant, looking for someone. Clara's blood turned to ice. She flew down the stairs, Josiah right behind her. In the front room, illuminated by a single lamp, stood Cornelius Whitmore. His clothes were torn. His face was scratched and bleeding. And in his arms he held Rosie. Her daughter was crying silently, her small body trembling against Cornelius's chest. He had one hand clamped over her mouth and the other wrapped around her waist. Let her go. Clara's voice came out as a whisper, then louder. Let her go, not a chance. Cornelius's eyes were wild, unhinged. The composed lawyer was gone. In his place stood something desperate and dangerous. You took everything from me. My reputation, my career, my freedom. Now I'm taking something from you. Josiah raised the rifle. Put the child down now. Shoot me and you hit her. Cornelius shifted Rosie in front of him like a shield. Try me, rancher. See what happens. Clara felt her legs trembling. "What I want is justice," Cornelius shouted, his voice cracking. "Samuel was my brother. His child and his widow should belong to me." "I was never yours," Clara shot back. "I married Samuel because I loved him, not out of some family duty." "And look where that love got you," Cornelius sneered. "Selling yourself to the first man with a warm bed." Josiah stepped forward, his knuckles white on his rifle. "You watch your mouth. Or you will do what?" Cornelius pulled Rosie tighter against him. "You will not shoot through a child to get to me." Rosie's terrified eyes found her mother's. "Mama," she whimpered, "help me." Something inside Clara snapped. "You want me?" she said, her voice steady. "Fine. Take me. Just let my daughter go." "Clara, no!" Josiah yelled, but she did not look at him. She kept her eyes locked on Cornelius. "You wanted Samuel's widow," Clara said. "Here I am. That is the deal. Leave Rosie with Josiah." Cornelius studied her, looking for a trick. "You would truly do that?" "She is my daughter. I would do anything for her." "Mama, no!" Rosie sobbed, struggling against his grip. "Do not leave me!" "It is okay, baby," Clara's voice cracked. "Mr. Mountain will keep you safe. I love you." She looked back at her enemy. "Do we have a deal? Me for her?" His grip on Rosie loosened. "How do I know you will not run?" "Because I am giving you my word," Clara said. "And unlike you, I keep my promises." After a long silence, Cornelius nodded. "Fine. Come here slowly." Clara started toward him, one step at a time, her heart pounding. "Josiah," Clara said without turning, "promise me you will take care of her." "I promise," his voice broke. "Clara, I promise." When she was just a foot away, she said quietly, "Let her go." Cornelius released Rosie. The little girl stumbled into her mother's fierce hug. "I love you, baby," she whispered. "Now go to Mr. Mountain. Go on." Rosie ran to Josiah, who scooped her up. His eyes never left Clara. Cornelius grabbed Clara's wrist, yanking her close. "Now you are mine." He dragged her toward the door. "Clara!" Josiah's voice was raw pain. "I will find you. I swear to God I will find you." She managed a small smile. "Take care of our girl." The words hung in the air as Cornelius pulled her into the night. Josiah stood frozen, Rosie sobbing in his arms. "Mr. Mountain," she cried against his chest, "you have to save her." "I'll get your mama back, little one. I swear it," Josiah promised, his jaw tight with resolve. He knelt to face Rosie. "Now listen close. I need you to be the bravest girl in the whole territory." He said, "I'm taking you to Doc Webb's place, where you'll be safe. Then I'm coming back for your mama." But Rosie cried, "What if that mean man hurts her?" "He won't. I won't let him." "'Cause I love your mama," he admitted, the words rushing out. "And I don't let nobody harm the people I love." Rosie's big eyes looked right through him. "Then you have to save her, Mr. Mountain. You just have to." He stood, grabbing his coat. "I will. Now let's ride. Every second counts." "What in heaven's name, Josiah?" Doc Webb asked, seeing them at his door. "It's Cornelius. He took Clara. I need you to watch Rosie for me." Josiah handed the little girl down. "Just keep her safe, Thaddeus. Please." The doctor's face went hard. "Go get her. I've got the girl." Josiah was already on his horse. "You'll come back," Doc's voice called out. "You'll come back with Clara. Now go." Josiah tore off into the night. He knew Cornelius would head for the train at Miller's Crossing. It was the only fast way out of the territory. If he rode hard, he could cut him off, if he was right, if he wasn't too late. He pictured Clara's face, her spirit. He couldn't lose her, not now. He barely felt the wind cut through him, only the fire to get her back. That low-down snake Cornelius snatched Clara the second they were out of sight of the ranch. He threw her over his horse and took off into the pitch-black night. "You're insane," she yelled over the wind. He just let out a wild laugh. Samuel always had it all, he snarled, his arm crushing her ribs. The luck, the land, and the pretty wife. Well, now it's my turn. I will never be yours, Clara said, her voice like cold steel. The slap came out of nowhere, sharp and stinging. Don't you ever say his name, Cornelius growled, his voice turning deadly. She tasted her own blood but refused to cry. He'll find me, she promised, quiet and sure. And you'll wish you were never born. That rancher ain't no tracker, Cornelius sneered. By the time he figures it out, we'll be 3 states away. You don't know the man, Clara stated, her voice steady even as her heart pounded. He fights for what is his. Cornelius just scoffed. You ain't his. You're just a stray he took pity on. I am going to be his wife, she said, turning to look him square in the eye. That shut him up right quick. He asked me last night, and I told him yes. She gave him a small, defiant smile. So take me wherever you want. I will always belong to him. His face twisted up in pure rage. Then maybe, he whispered, his voice dripping poison, there won't be anything left of you for him to find. Just then a sound sliced through the darkness. Hoofbeats, coming on fast. A huge figure on a horse blocked the trail ahead. It was Josiah. Let her go, Cornelius. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of a death sentence. This is your only warning. Cornelius pulled his horse to a halt, completely stunned. How did you— It does not matter how, Josiah interrupted, his rifle aimed right at Cornelius's chest. You can ride on, or you can die here. Your choice. You won't shoot, Cornelius bluffed, but his voice trembled. Try me, Josiah said, his finger tightening. You put your hands on the woman I love. I would put you down like a rabid dog and not think twice. In that one moment of fear, Cornelius's grip went slack. That was all Clara needed. She threw her weight to the side, tumbling onto the hard-packed earth. A gunshot cracked the night air. Cornelius slumped in his saddle, clutching a bloody shoulder, and then fell to the ground. Josiah was by her side in a flash, cutting the ropes off her wrists. Are you hurt? She couldn't answer. She just threw her arms around his neck and let the tears come. He held her tight. It is over. He cannot hurt you anymore. A pained groan came from the dirt nearby. Cornelius was stirring, his eyes full of hatred. This is not over, he gasped. Josiah gently set Clara aside and walked toward him. Oh, yes it is, he said in a low whisper. I am letting you live. But if you ever come near my family again, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth. Now get out of here. Cornelius scrambled onto his horse and vanished into the night. Clara watched him disappear, her body trembling. How did you find me? I know every inch of this land, Josiah said, pulling her into a strong embrace, and I would have searched for you forever. I love you, she whispered, looking up into his honest eyes. You and Rosie, you are my family now, he said, his voice thick with emotion, and I will spend the rest of my days protecting you both. Clara laughed through her tears. Take me home, Josiah. He helped her onto his horse, climbing up behind her, and wrapping his arms around her as they rode toward the safety of the ranch. When they arrived at the doctor's place, little Rosie burst out the front door. Mama! Clara slid down and caught her daughter in a fierce hug. The mean man is gone, sweetheart. He is never coming back. Rosie looked from her mama to the big man standing guard over them. Mr. Mountain saved you. Yes, baby, he sure did. Rosie got a serious look on her face. Does that mean you are really going to be my papa now? More than anything, Josiah said, his deep voice soft. Rosie's face lit up and she held her little arms out to him. Carry me, she ordered. He scooped her up like she weighed nothing. And where are we going, little one? Home, she said, snuggling right into his chest. The ride back to their own land was quiet and peaceful. Rosie was sound asleep in Josiah's arms. Clara rode close, feeling safe for the first time in a long while. Are you sure about this, Josiah? She asked softly. It has barely been a week. He looked over at her, his gaze as steady as the Texas stars. I have never been more sure of a thing in my life. Before you and Rosie came along, I was just a man going through the motions. Y'all brought me back to life. He reached out and took her hand. You gave me a reason to fight again. Clara squeezed his hand back, a deep feeling of peace settling in her soul. She was finally, truly home. I was just existing, not living. But then I saw you fighting for your daughter in that store, and something inside me woke up. His voice was heavy with emotion. You and Rosie, you brought the spring back to my life. I'm not letting that go. Tears slipped down Clara's face. I don't deserve you. You deserve the whole world, and I aim to spend my life giving it to you. They rode into Broken Ridge as the sun came up. The house felt more like a home now. Josiah gently laid the sleeping Rosie on the sofa. Clara hesitated. Josiah, I need to tell you something. When Cornelius had me, I promised myself that if I survived, I'd stop being afraid. She looked him in the eye. I want to marry you, Josiah. Not someday. Right now. I know it's fast, she said, but I'm tired of being scared of happiness. She took his hands. I love you. Rosie loves you, and I won't waste another minute. Josiah stared at her for a long moment, then a slow grin spread across his face. Well then, he said softly, I reckon we ought to find ourselves a preacher. Clara laughed through her happy tears. Just like that. Just like that, he said, pulling her close. I've waited a lifetime for a woman like you, Clara Whitmore. I'm not making you wait a second longer. Their kiss sealed a promise of family and a future. By noon, church bells were ringing. Clara stood in a borrowed white dress, her hands trembling. Mama, you look like a princess, Rosie said from the doorway, a crown of wildflowers in her hair. Mr. Mountain's gonna cry when he sees you, Rosie giggled. He cries a lot for such a big fella. Clara laughed. That's 'cause he has a big heart. Rosie took her mother's hand. I'm glad you're marrying him, Mama. He makes me feel safe. Are you truly all right with this, baby? With him being your new papa? Rosie got serious. My real papa is in heaven, but Mr. Mountain saved us. And he makes you smile. I think my real papa would be happy. A knock at the door was Doc Webb. It's time, ladies. The whole town's out there. Clara took a deep breath in her daughter's hand. Let's go get married. The church was full of familiar faces, even some she never expected. And there at the altar stood Josiah. He wasn't the rough rancher now, but the man she was going to spend her life with. His stormy gray eyes were already wet with tears, just like Rosie predicted. He took her hand, his grip warm and sure. You're beautiful, he whispered. You're crying, she whispered back. Can't help it, his voice cracked. The minister began. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to join Josiah Mallister and Clara Whitmore in holy matrimony. Clara hardly heard him. She was just looking at Josiah, the man who had saved her in every way that mattered. The minister continued, saying marriage was a promise to stand together through all of life's storms. And as they said their vows, their voices were clear and strong, a promise not just to each other but to the future. Josiah's hand held hers tight as the Reverend spoke of joy and sorrow. Josiah, do you take Clara to be your wife? His voice was thick with emotion. I do. Then it was Clara's turn. She looked into his storm-gray eyes, the ones that had fought and cried for her. I do, the Reverend smiled. Then I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. He pulled her close for a tender kiss, full of promise. Just then, Rosie tugged on his coat. Does this mean I can call you Papa now? Josiah knelt and swept her into a hug. You sure can, little one. The reception was a real town affair at the ranch, with folks bringing food and congratulations. For the first time, Clara felt she truly belonged. Then Mrs. Harper approached, looking nervous. Mrs. Mallister, she began. I need to apologize for how I treated you. The woman's usual rigidness was gone, replaced by shame. "Why now?" Clara asked softly. Mrs. Harper explained that after losing her own son 20 years ago, being judgmental was easier than feeling kind. "You deserved better from me," she said, her voice cracking. Clara took the older woman's hand. "We all deserve a second chance, Mrs. Harper." Later, Josiah found Clara holding a small velvet box. "I have something for you," he said. Inside lay a simple gold ring. "It was my mother's promise ring," he explained quietly. "A promise to always fight for each other, no matter what." His voice grew heavy with emotion. "I was saving this for someone who truly needed to know I would fight for her until my last breath." Tears slid down Clara's cheeks as she looked from the ring to the man who was now her husband. "Josiah," she whispered, "I don't know what to say." "Just say you'll wear it," he urged. "Of course I will." Josiah slipped the ring onto her finger next to her wedding band. "Now you have two promises from me," he said, wrapping his arm around her. "My love and my fight." Later that evening, as the last guests left, they stood on the porch. "Do you ever think about Mary and Lily?" Clara asked. He was quiet for a moment. "Every day. But it's different now. Before you, thinking about them was like drowning. Now it's just a sad memory, not a suffocating one." "I don't feel guilty for being happy anymore," Josiah confessed, his voice thick. "I think they would want this for me. For us." Clara cupped his face. "They would. Love doesn't run out, Josiah. Loving me doesn't mean you love them any less." He pulled her into a tight hug. "When did you get so wise, Mrs. Mallister?" She leaned against his chest. "Thank you for seeing me that day in the store, for giving us a chance." He held her tighter. "I didn't have a choice. It was like two broken pieces of the same soul finally finding their way back together." "I need you to know," Clara said, her eyes serious. "I love all of you. The broken parts just as much as the whole ones. Maybe even more." Just then, a tiny voice called from the doorway. "Mama? Papa?" Rosie stood there, rubbing her eyes. Josiah scooped her up into his arms. "Hey there, little one. What are you doing up?" Rosie snuggled against his chest. "I had a dream," she mumbled sleepily. "A good dream," she yawned. "I dreamed about a baby brother." "He had your eyes, Papa," Rosie continued, her voice fading. "And Mama's smile. We were all together, and we were so, so happy." As Rosie drifted back to sleep in his arms, Josiah and Clara shared a look filled with a silent question and a powerful hope. Clara wrapped her arms around them both. "Can the dream come true, Mama?" Rosie whispered. Clara looked at Josiah, his gray eyes shining. "Maybe someday, sweetheart," she said softly. "Maybe someday." He pressed his forehead to hers, and in the quiet of the Texas evening, their new family was finally whole. To shut him up. When she finally let go, they were both smiling. "Take our daughter to bed," she said. "Then you come back to me." "Yes, ma'am." A week ago, she was praying for a miracle with only 7 cents to her name. Now she had a husband, a home, and a future. 3 months later, Clara stood at that same kitchen window, her hand resting on her stomach where new life was growing. "You're smiling?" Josiah said from the doorway. "I'm happy." He wrapped his arms around her. "What are you thinking about? Just how different everything is. A good different, I hope. A miraculous different. 3 months ago, we had nothing. Now I have everything." She turned in his arms. "A husband I love, a daughter who's happy, and a baby on the way. A real life. He laid a gentle hand on her stomach. "It still feels like a dream," she whispered. He knew just what she meant. He often woke up thinking he was still in that cold barn watching his first family fade. But then he would feel Clara and hear little Rosie's laugh down the hall and know it was all real. Just then, Rosie flew into the kitchen, her cheeks bright with excitement. "The new baby horse is here," she hollered. "She is the prettiest thing you ever saw, Papa. Come quick." Josiah chuckled and looked at Clara, who took Rosie's hand. We would not miss it for the world. They all walked to the barn, a true family at last. The little foal wobbled on her new legs, a perfect white star on her forehead. "What are we going to name her?" Rosie asked, full of wonder. Josiah looked straight at Clara, his eyes soft. "Hope," he said. "Her name is Hope." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes. He pulled her close, his hand resting on the new life they were creating. "That is what this is, darling. All of it." Rosie tugged on her mama's dress, confused by the happy tears. Clara just kissed her head. "Grown-ups are a puzzle, sweet girl," she smiled. "We surely are." Later that evening, on the porch swing, Clara asked him, "Do you believe in fate, Josiah?" He thought for a spell. "I believe God puts folks in your path right when you need them most. Call it what you will." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I used to be so angry about everything I lost. But maybe it all had to happen to lead me here. To you." He squeezed her hand. "I would like to think Mary and Samuel are up there smiling down, maybe even cooking up this whole thing." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I like that idea just fine." "You saved us, Josiah," she said, looking up at him. "When everyone else turned their backs, you fought for us. You are the best man I have ever known. And I would do it all over again," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That is why I love you," she whispered right before he kissed her, a slow and steady promise. As he offered her his hand to go inside, she thought about the woman she was just 3 months ago, clutching 7 cents and a prayer, with no hope left. That woman was a stranger to her now. Grace finds you when you're at the bottom of the barrel. It found Clara when a good man named Josiah Mallister saw her holding a fading child with only 7 cents to her name. It found her on a ranch called Broken Ridge, a place where shattered things were put back together. As she stood at the top of the stairs, she looked at the portrait of his first family smiling over the fireplace. "Thank you," she whispered, "for sharing him." Then she turned toward her future, her husband, and the life that love had built. The past was a memory. The future was a promise, but right now was for living.